This meeting is being recorded by the host.
It's me.
Leave meeting.
It's me.
Leaving.
I'm the problem. It's me.
Am I the drama?
Am I the drama?
I gotta get the hell out of here. Oh,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Kirsten. Anybody? Nobody else is here.
No, it's just
I'm
you.
Blair.
And I'm Chris, and we are mediocre.
Mediocre content.
Mediocre content.
It's great.
We're so good at this, you guys.
It's so good. Obviously, that is not the case. We do have a special guest today.
Yes.
His name is Chris, and he's my brother. And welcome, Chris.
Woo!
Hi, hello.
He's not nervous at all.
Not nervous at
No,
all.
never.
We have a special episode today, which is why we have a special guest. Today's podcast is going to be all about vehicles, and that's why we've brought in our resident vehicle expert.
I
Why
love
are
how
you
you said
chuckling?
vehicle. It's a vehicle.
It's a vehicle.
Vehicular experts.
I'm sorry.
Experts. You know what? Sometimes my southern drawl gets a little deeper.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna try and stop giggling here. Okay. So are we doing? Would you like to do the good news first, or Chris? Would you like to say a few things, or how are we doing this, Kirsten?
Chris, why don't you introduce yourself? Let's see. The thing that we're going to talk about, obviously, is going to be automobiles. So why don't we just start with you giving us a little all about you? Just a little short little thing.
Sure. So, I used to be a mechanic at a dealership for about 8 years. And now I'm actually working at a R&D facility for engine oils and fuel additives. So like Shell V-Power, my company made the additive that goes into V-Power that makes it V-Power. So that's actually kind of cool. Exxon, we do their premium fuel too. So it's just kind of cool stuff to deal with there. Basically just tear down engines and build them up, run the tests.
That's awesome. And how long have you
That
been
is cool.
doing that?
Yep. So I've been at my company now for almost 3 years,
Awesome.
just doing that stuff. So yeah, it's pretty
And
neat.
For those who don't know, R&D means research and development. So it's
Thank you.
just
That was my next question.
Yeah. So R&D. It's
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just research and
Okay.
development.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good stuff.
To be honest, I didn't know it either until I worked there. So yeah,
That's
it's
education
like
at
sure,
its
whatever
finest.
that is.
Sounds good.
Seems legit.
Cool.
And always, Blair, would you like to share a little bit of a disclaimer with all of that information?
Yes. So today we are not giving any car information or any advice on how to do things with your car. I mean, Chris, you could probably do that, but we could definitely not do that.
Definitely not.
Um, so
I'm not an expert.
right, yeah. So, just when we talk about these things, just take it with a grain of salt, do your own research. Watch a YouTube tutorial, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, just we're getting ourselves off the hook for this one. So. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and go on to the good news. Does that sound good?
Let's
Okay.
hear it, because your notes are impeccable, let me tell you.
So, my first article is "Girl is cured from incurable cancer."
Amazing.
So our friend, her name is Alyssa, and she has leukemia, or had leukemia. She's 13. She lives in the UK, and she was diagnosed with T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia in May of last year. And it was really aggressive. Excuse me. And she had to go through a bone marrow transplant, and a bunch of other different things, but they were able to do this experimental treatment. And basically they have a breakdown in the article of like how it works, but she had T cells with a type of white blood cell that destroys threats in the body. So her T cells were out of control, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basis of this particular disease. And doctors use basic editing to engineer her therapy. So they were able to identify exactly what was causing this and then alter the DNA and to resist and so to accept the chemotherapy a little bit better.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they did some base editing and changes to one letter in the genetic code, and then they were able to alter the DNA and remove protected markings to were removed to protect donor T cells. There we
That's
go.
such a mouthful.
I know. And then receptors were removed as well to prevent donor T cells from attacking the body. So basically, they were able to modify all of these cells in order to provide a treatment, and it was specific to her particular type of cancer, which is very cool.
Perfect.
And so
That's
now
awesome.
she is in remission.
Oh, yay.
Yay, yay her. We're excited. And there's a lot of other science that goes into that. Obviously, I couldn't get through all of it in
Yeah,
the
no
good
way.
news, but bottom line is we're coming up with much more innovative ways to cure leukemia, which is great.
Always great.
All right. Now, the second one is Christmas trees. And so I know we all just probably went through, at least by the time this episode comes out, we probably went through the process of either packing up our plastic Christmas tree and putting it in the attic or throwing away our real Christmas tree. So over 8 million Christmas trees are sold annually in the UK. This article is based in the UK. And an estimated 25 to 30 million are sold in the US.
Wow.
Real trees are, so those are real trees. And so the whole thing with this article is if you got a real Christmas tree, you're probably helping the environment more than if you got a plastic tree, which is counterintuitive
Yeah.
because you would think they, like if you're cutting down trees, that's always a bad thing, right?
Mhm.
But the plastic in the plastic Christmas trees or the fake Christmas trees is more harmful to the environment in the long term. Like after you use it for however many years, 10, years or whatever, you're actually like for that to break down, it's more harmful to the environment. So, but if you're using real trees, which absorb CO2 in our ozone,
Right.
in our
Mhm.
atmosphere, then you're helping that. And then they have to plant all of these forests, which is good for the environment as well.
I could see
And
that.
they're not all getting chopped down all at the same time, obviously. So you're kind of creating this like ecosystem and cycle by buying real trees as opposed to the plastic fake ones.
Interjection here. Isn't
Yes.
there also, unrelated to your article, but related to this, isn't there something recently I have heard where they're replanting Christmas trees as well?
Mm-hmm.
So that could kind of be good too, because then you're kind of like just renting it out and putting it back out.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of ways to do this, but it's a good way to help the environment as well. Yeah, and it also like bringing a tree into your home also kind of helps you learn about growing things and plants, and you have to keep the thing watered or it's gonna like catch on fire or something.
Oh gosh. Worst
You know,
nightmare.
'cause, if you have a dry Christmas tree and your lights just like spark a little bit, it's
All
over.
right.
It's not good.
And that is why I don't have a real Christmas tree.
That's the same reason Chris won't let me get one.
It's horrifying.
But it's gonna be fine. So it's good for the environment. Think about it. You could even buy one just to put outside. You wouldn't even have to bring it in your home.
I'm pretty sure they just grow outside by themselves.
Well, it depends on where you are, Kirsten. It depends on where you are. In my
That's
particular
fair.
climate, they don't grow outside by themselves, or if they do, they're giant, and I can't put it in my backyard.
Just need a whole palm tree in my living room right now.
No.
Anyway.
All right. So, and then our last one is old ass turtle continues to be old.
I'm glad that's what
All
you
right.
No,
went
I'm
with.
interested.
No.
Yes.
This is Chris's segment.
All right. So this turtle, his name is Jonathan, and he is 190 years old. He was
Wow.
believed to be born in 1832.
Wow.
Yes. And he, let's see, he, hold on, I'm trying to like phrase this correctly.
Uh-oh.
An old photograph
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
was found of him at the governor's residence in the UK,
Oh,
and sometime between 1882 and 1886, which further supports the theory that he's been alive since 1932.
so this is a UK turtle.
Yes, it's a UK turtle.
He's a
It's an
UK
old ass turtle.
It's an old ass turtle.
I love that.
Yes, yes. He is the world's
Holy
oldest
crap.
tortoise,
Yeah.
and they did a 3-day birthday party for him in his home because he currently lives in the South Atlantic island,
Adorable.
St. Helena, which is a British territory.
So he's a British turtle.
He's a British turtle, which I mean,
Hmm.
UK.
Meh, eh,
Anyway, British turtle, and
That's
he
wild.
that is wild.
50 years living there, so he's lived there most of his life.
That's amazing. Good for
Yeah.
him. At
And they
least the
gave him-
article didn't say old ass turtle continues to be old until now.
Right? No, exactly. No, he's still living. They gave him a cute little like plate of veggies as his cake, because that's what turtles eat apparently. And
Keep
yeah,
that cholesterol down, you know?
yeah, right,
Keep-
exactly.
He's old after all.
Yeah.
Watch his weight.
And I think he
Yeah.
has. Does he have a Twitter?
Oh
No.
my gosh.
No, he doesn't have a Twitter.
Okay.
But there's St. Helena Tourism. They do have a Twitter.
Robert Blair, he's a turtle.
All right. All right. That's fair.
I'm just kidding. I'm
But you
just
can
kidding.
look at his pictures and everything on their website.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah,
That's pretty cool.
Great. I'm glad.
How much
he's
does he
still
weigh?
kicking.
Does it tell you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much the turtle weighs. I don't think it is included in the article.
That's unfortunate.
It's really big. It's a big turtle though.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Well, that's awesome news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sweet.
And so that is the end of the good news.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Tell
with
me
that,
something good.
not sponsored. So don't copyright me.
Don't copyright me.
Sorry.
We do not have the rights to that
Cut that
song,
out.
Chris.
Cut.
Come
We do
on.
not.
Good.
Moving right along.
Wasn't that on K95 or something? I think it was.
Is it?
Yeah, they say it on the radio station. That's where I'm from.
Also not sponsored
They're
by
like-
K95.
It's like a good news thing. They're like, oh, tell me something good. And
Again,
then
not sponsored.
the news.
We're cutting that one
No
out
All
copyright.
right. Let's get the ball
We don't have
rolling
the rights
before
to- no,
we
no, no.
before we get copyrighted. Okay.
for sure. All right. So today, the reason we brought Chris is not to have copyright infringement, but in fact to talk to him about the history of vehicles and also his experience. But we're going to start with the industry and kind of work our way through. So, these are widely expensive purchases of a car, right? So they're very expensive. They have a huge impact on our culture, and that's from music to movies to everyday life. I mean, I would say the majority of US people have a commute, though these days a lot of us are working remotely, so that may vary now. But for the most part, cars, vehicles, transportation, huge impact on our culture, right? So there's always new technology coming in. We see it advertised all the time. We have lots of different looks going on, and obviously that builds preferences and things like that. So it's really kind of like that domination transportation for the average American, I would say. We do have a little bit of statistics based on Statista. Out of over 5,000 surveys, over 70% of American commuters use their cars getting place to place, which makes sense. There's a lot of places to go, a lot of distances to travel, particularly for those that don't live in the city where a lot of jobs may be located. And then the second method is public transportation, which only makes up about 11%. So if we're looking at 70% going by car versus the 11% using public transportation, that's a 60% difference. Just for the second.
I like public transportation. I'm just
Do
saying.
you?
I do.
Mm.
I love, like, I've been to New York a couple of times. I love riding the subway.
Mm.
And like when I traveled to Europe, we only did public transportation. It was awesome. The
Yeah.
trains over there are super fun. I wish
Oh,
we
I
had more
bet.
trains here.
Yeah. Well, they have like commuter train. I think the thing too is a lot of potent, and I obviously people in the UK use the public transportation a lot to commute as well. But I think like for America, it's basically just utilitarian. Like I'm sure they use commuting to like go between different countries, obviously because they're closer. But for
Yeah.
for America, you're just like, oh, gotta go to work, getting on the metro,
Yeah.
and it just becomes kind of laborsome.
Yeah.
Um, And like I mentioned previously, this next note basically kind of points this to home. The average American has to travel between 30 to 45 minutes to work if they're physically
Exactly.
going. So
Yeah.
it just kind of makes it more of a, a chore than
Yeah.
something that you're using for fun. Um, but that's the basic start for that one.
I like it.
Yeah. Um, a little bit of history, of course, is vehicles have been around for a while, and I think a lot of people, when you think about the history of vehicles, I don't know what you guys think, but a lot of it is attributed to like Henry Ford in America and the
Yeah.
start of, that kind of revolution with cars. But it's not like transportation in this form with like wheels and things is like, not been used in
Yeah.
ancient history before. There's obviously many stepping stones that contributed to what it looks like today. Um, there was a time, obviously, when animals and carts were used. And this first appeared with the invention of the wheel around 3500 BCE. I'm sure there's debate, as there always is, on when the exact time frame was, but it would pave the way for peoples in Egypt and Rome, the Greeks. They would advance this very basic kind of model and showcase things like ornate chariots that would then be transporting the wealthy around the towns, or even in mourning. I know a lot of ornate chariots were used for funerals as well, and funeral processions of that nature. Um, and so from the chariots, ideas trying to automate these styles went into full swing. So in the 15th century, uh, Leonardo da Vinci's clockwork car used springs to create movement to obviously automate movement. So you went from a chariot that was usually animal drawn to now people are trying to find ways to automate that movement, right? So then in 1712-ish, there was a guy named Thomas Newcomen who is credited for the idea of using fire engines, now known as steam engines, and originally used coal mines to pump water from the mines. And this model was used to use that energy to create the movement for the cart. So steam engines and things of that nature started to, be up and coming. And obviously we attribute things like that to trains, but in this,
Trains.
yeah, I love trains.
I know
But
this is the car episode, but trains.
trains, but it's transportation in general because these things influence other ways of automating movement of people, right? So that's
Yes.
a huge deal. Um, and so after that model, there are many, many iterations, and there's too many to go through. I mean, this article listed like step after step after step, and you could almost see each iteration just building on one another. And now, through the years, and through many inventors internationally, the automobile would enter the gasoline era thanks to a man named Nicholas Otto. He would adopt gears, a fourth wheel to the design thanks to Carl Benz, and then would offer the new fuel option diesel thanks to Rudolf Diesel. So now we have a fully automated vehicle running on fossil fuels, which at the time, not a big deal. Now we know a little bit differently, but whatever. Um, and the modern vehicle today obviously has many different fuel types. We've gone from gasoline to diesel to solar to hybrids and all the new inventions that are going to
Electric.
electric. They're all going to come down through and continue building a better and better movement for humans.
Cool.
So that is a brief and exhaustive history.
I like it.
Yeah. So,
Good job.
Thanks. They also have a couple of fun facts if you're interested. This is based on statistics that are now a couple weeks old. So who knows how often these things change. It's now 2023, but in 2022, the most expensive vehicle, according to Lux Digital, was a 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO. Not even a new vehicle. This is just a 1963 vehicle, and it's valued at 70 million US dollars.
Wow.
Bless you.
I tried to mute it. I'm sorry.
That's
Didn't
Fine.
work.
It's perfect. I have never.
No way.
I don't really. I mean, I know what a Ferrari is, obviously, but
Yes.
I don't necessarily know a whole lot. I don't. Chris, do you know anything about this particular vehicle, or have you heard of it before? Or...
I'm not
No.
rich.
Fair. I mean, Ferraris are expensive even by today's standards, so I can imagine something like this would probably be a collector's item. On the other side of things, however, there's also the most inexpensive vehicle of 2022. And according to way.com, that was a 2022 Chevy Spark with a value of just under 14,000 US dollars.
Junk.
Wow.
What?
Junk.
Junk. Oh.
So
Opinions fly.
one of Chris's work friends, it was really into Tesla, and when we were living in Virginia, and he was super into Tesla. They called him Elon because that's like all he would talk about, and he had like two, I think, and he would like rent them out to people. It was a whole thing. And so when
cool.
we got a Tesla, and so Chris sent him a picture and was like, "Hey, we got a Chevy Spark," and just to like make him angry.
Oh my gosh, that's
funny.
brilliant.
Dang
Yeah.
it, man.
You know what though? I have to ask Chris, what don't you like about Chevy Sparks? I'd love to know why you think it's junk.
Well, for one, and this is no offense to you, Blair, since you have a Tesla, but
I understand.
I'm not big on electric vehicles. While they are cool and fast and uh, more environmentally safe, um, my company will go under if electric vehicles take 100%, or at least my position, because I'm in the fuels position. So if they take fuels away 100%, then I'm pretty much out of a job. So I'm not 100% on the get rid of it all, but Chevy Spark is just like a cheap car. It's kind of like
Yeah.
mom's note, like a
Mom,
Nissan
don't take
Versa note.
offense.
It's like, oh, she knows. I tell her all the time. I'm just like, this is just a junk car, like people don't buy them and take care of them. It's a throwaway car for people.
Well,
Yeah.
And
that is
to
something.
her, she loves it. She
There's
loves
something
it.
to be said for that,
There's people
though.
out there that love it, but
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely something
there.
to be
Okay,
said.
so I'm saying this as like as a car guy, like I know what's better out there and
Yeah.
like whatever, but like some people just like what they like, and that's just my opinion. Everything I say
Yeah.
is my opinion. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's why we had you on, because you kind of have a different perspective than like what we would
Exactly.
have.
Right.
But yeah, okay, cool.
I mean, if it's inexpensive, I think that's like a big thing for a lot of people. Everything is really expensive these days. And even if you, like, to Chris's point, even if you know that it's kind of like a throwaway car, you're kind of like, well, I can just pay this now and have a vehicle for however long I'm afforded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like when buying a
much.
vehicle though, you have to, there's like there's a balance, right? There's like
True.
a amount you're willing to pay, and then also quality. Like
Yeah.
I think like Camrys and like Honda Accords and stuff like that kind of fall into that category because they're like relatively inexpensive, but also they'll last forever. So
That's true. That's a fair point.
I mean, you can even go as low as like a Civic or something. I mean, Civics are
yeah,
cheaper than the Accords, and you see everybody has one of those, and
Mhm.
they're like, I don't know, Hondas make really good cars, and so do Toyotas. So it's like you could take like the Camry, like you said, or even a Corolla. I mean, that's kind of Corolla's like a Honda Civic, but I mean, you take
yeah,
those and they're cheaper, and
true.
they'll
That's
last you a
very
long
true.
time.
Awesome.
So
So
even if you don't take care of them,
Right, exactly,
when they're
exactly.
falling
I
apart,
mean, really,
it's
they
true.
just go forever.
Um, all right. So I think that gives us a good segue into a break, though, because we do want to hear more from Chris. We have a couple of questions we're going to be posing him in the second half that'll delve more into these topics. So let's take a break.
Do you hate a quiet house?
Are you tired of listening to The Office in the background while doing the dishes?
Then you need mediocre content.
Listen to us giggle and rant about meaningless topics in the comfort of your own home.
Put us on in the background while cleaning your house, cooking, or even vacuuming.
We promise you won't miss anything important.
And you can always listen again.
Choose mediocre content for your background noise. Welcome back, everybody. Silence from the crowd.
I know.
Cheese and crackers.
Thanks for listening to the ad.
Yes, that's our second new ad.
Yeah. It's gonna
Good.
We got one more, and then we're just gonna cycle them through. So you guys are gonna have to deal with it for the whole year. I'm just kidding.
It'll be good. We worked hard on those, I would say.
I think so. It's some of my best comedy writing, which I have no experience doing, so it's great.
Oh, you mean like our entire podcast?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Now that we're back, we've got a set of questions that we're going to pose to Chris, and that will probably spark some conversation and some controversy. So, also, disclaimer, these are just opinions. They are not necessarily the belief of any one brand or that or the other. Just friends talking about cars. Yeah. So Christopher, first question we have. What is your favorite car brand and why?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. So, growing up, like, always had Fords pretty much. Started out with a Chevy and then went to Fords for a while, but always been like a Chevy guy, you know, like I had Fords because Papa loved Fords, and that was pretty much the only reason I stuck with it. But now that I'm a grown man, I've made my own decisions to get pretty much all Chevys. I got one Volkswagen left, but everything else is Chevrolet. So I would have to say Chevrolet is probably my go-to brand, as of a lot of people as well.
Yeah. And what is it about Chevy though? Like Chevy brands that you gravitate to?
Well, when you look at or when you talk to people about like their favorite car brand, or like, you know, car guys, and like, hey, you know, what's your favorite thing to do? And most people are like, oh yeah, I want to go fast, right? So a lot of these new Chevrolets come with an LS engine, which is like in any truck pretty much from like the 2000s, early like late 90s, so like and up have all LS engines. So they're just really high demand, really easy to build, and they hold a lot of power. So their bottom end can hold a lot of power. So you can pretty much put turbos, blowers, anything crazy on it. And most of the time it will hold that. So you can go faster.
Nice.
And then, yeah. And then the other thing too is like, because there's so many out there, like you can go on the internet and find out if there's a problem with your truck or car. You're like, hey, you know, what's this doing? And then somebody's got it. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not the only person that's had this problem, which is another really good resource to use when trying to fix it on your own, because shops get pretty expensive. But that's why I lean towards them, and just for the fact of it's just my preference.
Nice. What is so I'm assuming it's probably a Chevy. I'm not 100% sure, but what has been your favorite vehicle to own, whether it's been a Chevy or otherwise?
You know, this is gonna sound like what I just said 180 degrees, but I had a drift car for a while, and that was a BMW. It was a 99 BMW 323, and that thing was pretty sweet. And the only reason I like it is because I literally beat the hell out of that thing. Like, I mean, off the limiter every event. I mean, it lived on the limiter. And I didn't care. Like, it just, I don't know. It was a throwaway car to me. You know, like I bought it for $600. I fixed it for little to nothing. Literally went to the junkyard, bought a $10 part and fixed it. And then drove it for a little bit, and then ended up drifting. And after that, that was pretty much it. Just see basically what it could take, and if it didn't, I didn't care, because just like LS is like, those engines are everywhere too. So if you blow an engine, just put a new one in it. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Me on a
and I can't
Saturday.
complain. Oh, 100%.
Just
You know,
Blair's
I'm
just
gonna
out
be
here
honest, like,
fixing hers.
Yeah, totally.
yeah, I mean,
I don't have
on base, you know.
Yeah.
I have a frunk. I don't have an engine. Okay,
A frunk.
a
Hey, that's
front
fine.
trunk.
Hey, you and Porsche owners, like whatever.
Right.
It is what
Yeah.
it is. You basically have a Porsche. I mean,
That's
Yeah.
amazing. um,
uh, but yeah,
yeah.
that's fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. I will not just be fixing my car on the fly, as you are quite aware. However, I'm really glad that you can. Um, what, speaking of fixing though, what is the craziest thing, like pre, your current job, back in your mechanic days, what's the craziest thing that you've seen somebody come into the shop to have fixed by you? Or maybe, whoever you're working with.
It's kind of a tough question. You see a lot of
Mm.
crazy things.
That's kind of sad.
And as far as dealerships go, I mean, you see some stuff that's like, I don't know, you're like, wow, that's pretty screwed up. So, but then most things are like just warranty work at a dealer. But I've seen, we could say a couple like flywheels have cracked. Seen that.
Can
Um,
you explain what that
and it's
is?
more
Yeah.
so,
What is a flywheel?
Yeah, what is
yeah.
a flywheel?
So so a flywheel goes on the back of your engine. So you have your engine that sits like this, and then your trans is here. Well, there's a flywheel that bolts to the back of your crankshaft, which is in your engine, uh, and then your starter hits it, and that is what spins the engine over. So when you
Got
start
it.
your car, plunger in the starter goes like this, spins, and then hits the flywheel, and then everything kind of does its thing.
Goes from there. Okay.
Nice.
So yeah, so seen one of those cracked, which is pretty crazy. Like you don't see that too often. And it was on a stock Maxima too, so that was just kind of weird.
Hmm.
I did see, so one of the problems, I worked at Volkswagen for a little bit. Loved working there. I don't know, just made a lot of money, but it was actually kind of cool. Not cool, but so this kid was working there, and his dad was the team lead. So he was going to his dad and being like, "Hey, what's the problem with this?" And they went for a test drive, and it was misfiring really bad. It was lagging. Didn't want to move really, just kind of was in limp mode almost. So you'd hit the gas, it wouldn't go anywhere. It was pretty like normal thing there. Ended up, I don't know how they got to it, but they were like, "Oh, it needs a transmission." So like, okay. So they put a trans in it. Took the kid a week to put a transmission in, which is, I know you guys probably couldn't do it in a day, but that's like a day's worth of work.
I was gonna say, not my expertise.
Yeah, and you talked about earlier, like, oh yeah, you can just put a new engine in. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's like an expensive thing to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, when you don't do it, yeah, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
like, you could do it 100%. Like,
Okay.
Okay, Blair, next assignment.
It's my new
really,
hobby.
you could, man.
Yeah.
You could 100%. Like, it's not that crazy. Just nuts and bolts, really, is what it comes down to. But it ended up being they put a trans in it, drove it down the road, did the same thing, and they're like, "Wait a minute, what's this about?" And this was on an old Volkswagen Cabriolet, so this is like an old car, and not too old, but old enough. But it ended up being the check engine light bulb. It's like when you turn your key on and you see your check engine light and all the lights come on. Basically, your car's doing a self check, and then when the lights go off, that means it's good. So the engine light wasn't coming on when you turn the key on, and they're like, "What the heck?" So they took the cluster out, replaced the bulb because it was just a twisting bulb, replaced the bulb, and the car was fine. I was like, that was customer pay transmission. Like that was an expensive bulb there, Like
Oh
Wow.
my
you'll
god.
just
That
yeah.
is
So
crazy.
sent that one out the door. That one blew my mind. I'll say that one. That one blew my
Or
mind.
I feel
just like,
so bad
I-
for that person that had to pay for a new
Yeah.
transmission.
Yeah.
That sucks.
But at the same time, like while everyone in here is probably like, "Oh my god, like, that's why we hate
Yeah.
dealerships," but no, like tell me the first time you looked at your dash and were like, "Oh, one of the bulbs is out, causing my car to not drive right." Like,
Yeah, no,
tell me that,
exactly.
like, you're never
Until you said that the car was like doing a self check every time you turned it on, I had no idea that that's what
Yeah.
was happening. Like I know that the lights come on and then go
Right.
off, and if the light stays on, then that's a
Yeah.
problem. But like I don't know anything past that.
Yeah.
Me neither. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
No, and honestly, like you can take bulbs out of cars. Like Chevrolet, for instance, you could take a bulb out. Like on my new Yukon that I just got, I say new, it's an '03, but I just got this Yukon, and
New
like
to
half
you.
the dash
Yeah.
light bulbs are out. But
Oh,
it's like the car runs fine. I drive it
Yeah.
daily. Like
yeah.
I floor it. I
So
drive,
for
and
whatever
it's like it is what it
reason,
is.
Yeah.
so for whatever reason on that particular
Volkswagens.
Volkswagen model, if the light goes out, then the engine also goes out.
It's
That's
weird. It's
that's
That is
weird.
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 Like it
I
stupid
don't.
Who
Volkswagen. That's all.
designed that?
Everybody's gonna be
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's why you never buy a Volkswagen. But
I don't know.
Chris's opinions.
yeah,
I thought, didn't you have a Volkswagen at
it's
one point?
crazy,
You had
dude.
like a Golf or something, didn't you?
Yeah, still got it.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I still got it.
All right.
Whatever, it's fine.
Hey, when you know how to work on them, you can have one.
It's
You know?
fine. Yeah.
Not because he knows if the bulb goes out, it's not his engine.
Right.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
no, my trans.
All
That
right.
still was pretty crazy. Yeah.
So with all of that, obviously you're very proficient in fixing and modifying and doing what you need to do to make your own vehicles run right. But you've also
Mediocre.
you've also done a little bit of modifying for fun. So you've drifted recently. You've dabbled in some drifting. Can you go over what drifting is, first of all, for the listeners, so that
And Blair.
and
The
Blair.
listeners and Blair.
Yep.
And then also we'll dive into a couple of questions around that. But first, just kind of explain what drifting is.
So drifting is basically you're spinning the rear tires and your car is sideways, and you're going through a track that some would drive fast, with grip, 100% grip. And a lot of misconception with drifting is like you're driving without grip, right? Like you're just doing a burnout through the whole track, and that's not the case. You actually are spinning so fast, decent tires to have grip to push you forward and to have control. So it's just like you're sideways going through the track, transitioning left and right, just as you would in a car, but your rear tires are just burning up. That's pretty much
Gotcha.
the gist of drifting.
Okay.
Yep,
Awesome. And
it's pretty fun.
I guess the entry question that we have would be, what is the first car that you modified for drifting? And what did you do to modify it?
Yep. So my first car was the BMW. It was a 1999 323i. It was a very luxurious car back in '99. Like if you had a BMW, you were like, "Oh yeah, I'm high class." My car was not that. So it was probably like the bottom of the barrel, and like I said, I paid $600 for it. So I actually got a really good deal on it. But the first thing I did to even get it to drift was weld the diff. So the rear diff, it's rear wheel drive, so only the rear tires spin. Um, but it has an open diff. So basically, one tire will spin and have power to it, and the other tire just kind of does its thing. Um, and what you do is you open up that diff, so it's got a cover on it. You open it up, you cut two pieces of metal, and you stick them in between the gears because the diff's got two gears going to your axles,
Mm-hmm.
and they're splined. So your gears are here going to your right wheel and your left wheel, and you basically weld a plate in between them. So now they're one, and they'll spin together.
Nice.
And then that's how you do a sweet burnout with two tires.
Nice.
And that's how you drift. So, because you can't have one not spinning in the rear. But that was the very first thing I did, and that was only to be able to drift.
Mhm.
And other than that, you're pretty much set. I put engine and trans mounts in it, solid ones. So, like our cars that we have that we daily drive and stuff, we have like rubber bushings in your mounts. So your engine and trans mounts are rubber, and that's to give the engine flex, and then take away any vibrations that your engine has or transmission has. So when you're sitting at a light, you're not just rattling your teeth out because every little thing the engine's doing, you're feeling in the car. But in a drift car or a race car, you kind of want that, right? So you can kind of feel, what the car is doing. If it's doing some weird stuff, you kind of have an extra sense to it, so you kind of
Hmm.
figure it out.
Got it.
So that's kind of
Got it.
cool. But
Awesome.
yep.
Very neat.
And while you're in that state, so you've modified your car, you're going out to the track. What are you thinking about most when you're going through the motions of drifting through a track?
So it's kind of
Do
like
you have to wear a
backwards
helmet
of
for
what you would
this?
think.
Is this a helmet
Yeah.
thing? Okay.
Yep.
I
All
mean,
right.
hopefully.
You got to have
I
a
just
helmet
want to
on
make
track.
sure. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. You have to have a helmet on track. But the thing is, like, if you go and you watch drifting, right, you're like, these boys are out of control. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They're just out there doing their own thing. But it takes so much to actually do it. Um, as far as control, right? Like, it doesn't look like you have control, but you have 100% control.
Mm.
So your throttle input, your brake input, a lot of people, including myself, had like hydraulic handbrakes. So basically, you would take a handle, like an extra, like an e-brake, right? But it's
Mm-hmm.
hydraulic, and you put it in your car, and you would just attach it to the rear. So you would tap into the rear brakes. Some people have a second caliper on the rear, so you'd have two brakes like this. And this one's for your hydraulic handbrake in the car, and this one's just for normal stopping. But when you
Okay.
yank it, it locks the rear tires up.
Mm.
And that helps kick sideways. That helps make minor adjustments in your line, um, especially when you're tandeming, which is with like you and I, right? You and I would be drifting together. They call
So
that
cute.
tandeming, and yeah,
Fun
no,
date
that's cool,
idea.
man. Like I love it. It's great. Yeah, that's like yeah, get one. Go get two of them. Yeah. Um, but the goal with tandeming is like getting as close as you can, as far as proximity to the guy you're tandeming with or girl you're tandeming with, um, and then not hitting them. That's key.
I mean, that
Don't
would
hit
be
I
them.
think,
key.
yeah, I would be a little bit
Yeah.
upset,
Yeah.
probably.
Oh my gosh.
You
Yeah.
know, I'll be honest, like when I first started, it was very like when I first started drifting, I used my simulator. So I have a driving sim in my house, and it's just a wheel, pedals, and shifter,
Hmm.
and it goes to my computer. And that helped me a lot as far as like the hand-eye coordination, um,
Yeah,
and
I was
then the
gonna
throttle
say.
control and everything like that. Yeah. So I mean, I love doing that, and that helped me progress so much within the actual like active drifting. In the sim at home, you don't feel the car movement, so that's something you got to get used to. But my very first event, 4 laps in it, I ended up linking the whole thing. So I can't say that the sim didn't help me at all. It definitely helped me progress faster. And I couldn't recommend that more to actually get a sim if you want to try something out. Even, I mean, just go ahead and they're not too cheap, but they're not excessively expensive either. So I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend if you're looking at like, driving something, definitely try a sim first,
Hmm.
um, just to kind of get a feel and idea of what you're actually trying to get into.
That's
Yeah,
Because
I
some
feel
people are like,
like,
oh, I want road racing or stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of hand-eye coordination, like you said, involved because it sounds like you have more than just like the steering wheel and the pedals. There's like other things happening as well,
Hmm.
which
Oh
so
yeah.
that's really cool that you can,
Yeah.
practice at home.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
practice makes perfect.
100%.
So even if you weren't doing it on the sim, I imagine, I mean, I know for a fact you would go to the track as well, even outside of the events that you went to, just to continue to feel the motion and get
Oh yeah.
used to what it felt like. And if you end up with a new vehicle, even if you know what you're doing, maybe you don't know how that vehicle will respond, to the different
One thousand
movements
percent.
that you have. So
One
it's
thousand percent.
that's great advice for anybody who might be looking into getting into something like that, to be aware of that there are options out there for something like that.
Yep.
Um, and
Just
then
remember, every car drives different.
it's
That's the thing.
exactly.
Hmm.
And that's the case whether you're drifting or not as well. And
Yeah, I remember when I was
Yep.
a kid, I thought that like all cars drove the same, and I like would routinely like when my we would get a new car or something, and my
Yeah.
mom, you know, sometimes they like hit the brakes too hard or something, and I would like routinely be like, "Mom, what are you doing? Like, why are you not? This doesn't
Yeah,
make any
stop
sense."
doing that.
Little 10-year-old Blair like had no idea.
So judgy.
Yeah, I was like, "Mom, I don't think you
Are
know how to
you
drive
good
this
at
car. I
driving?
don't think you're good."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh man. Um awesome. I think we have one more question for you.
Sure.
Um what is the biggest advice that you would give somebody who's looking for a vehicle or, looking for their next vehicle purchase? What are some things that you would advise them to do before making that purchase or think about while, doing their research?
Sure. So my big thing, and this was actually taught to me by a salesman. I know it's kind of crummy, but a salesman, like when you're thinking about getting a car or you go to a dealership and you're just kind of looking around, you need to think about what you're going to do with it, right?
Mm,
So if it's just going to be your go to work, come back car, you don't need the high top of the line car or whatever, right? You don't need a big car. You know, if you're just going to work your office job, you don't need a big SUV. You don't need a big truck. Like, what do you need? What are you using it for, right? So really think about how you're going to use it. Um, and then the other thing is like budget, right? So
mm,
we all have a budget. We're all make different money. We all spend our money differently, whatever. Really like sit down and think about before you make that big purchase, because you make that big purchase in a, $80,000 truck at this point, and that's not even top of the line,
mm,
$1,000
mm,
truck, and now you have this big payment. You don't know how you're going to pay for it, but you just wanted the big truck because, oh, I have a big truck and I'm driving to my office job an hour and a half away. Like,
mhm.
why did you get that truck? And
yeah,
that's kind of the thing. Be smart because you're going to be stuck with that for a while, as
Mhm.
far as the payment goes if you buy brand new. Um, but if you're not and you are somewhat mechanically inclined, always go for the deals, in my opinion. Like, it's worked
yeah.
out for me. um, I did finance an '07 Tahoe back in the day, and that was like the biggest mistake of my life. I feel like not, that's kind of exaggerated, but like it was just a mistake because it's like I didn't need to do that. I just wanted it, and like it didn't hurt me necessarily, but it hindered me from doing other things I wanted because, like I said, now I have this payment and I'm
Mm,
just fresh out of high school, and you know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
mhm.
now I have all these other payments that I have to make. So if I would have just stuck with what I was doing and buying like crap cars, and I would have been fine.
Yeah,
So, which is what I've resorted to now. Like, I find deals and I do what I got to do.
that's great.
But
So I
that
have
would be
another
my suggestion.
question. I have another question. So
Yeah.
if you're not buying new, if you're buying a used car and you're someone like us who doesn't have any mechanical experience, like
Mm.
what are some good like green flags for a good used car to look for? Just like let's
That's
say we're
good.
going back
Yeah.
and forth to work or whatever.
Sure. So you want to look at mileage. You don't want something incredibly too high. A lot of people start freaking out at like 100,000 and stuff.
Yeah, that's what
You
I've
don't
heard.
necessarily have to freak out because that's not a big deal, right? Like, a lot of these cars were made to go years and years upon buying and driving and all that stuff. Um, if it's possible, and you have a hookup somewhere, I would suggest, as far as like a Carfax thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to look for leaks. That's kind of something that you want to look for as far as that goes. Leaks, uh, smell the oil, just make sure it doesn't smell like fuel,
Mm,
or anything else.
Hmm.
But I mean, if you stick with the quality stuff like a Honda or something like that, like we were talking earlier, you'll be all right because those things were meant to go forever. And then once you get it, so like say you buy this $3,500 Honda Civic, right? It's not too old, it's pretty new. Um, Good rule of thumb is to always change your fluids. That way, they're done,
Mm-hmm.
and done, and you can now keep track of your mileage, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
So you get a car with 100,000 miles, go ahead and change the oil. Um, Drain the coolant if you really feel like it. You don't have to. Main thing is pretty much oil, trans fluid if you want. A lot of stuff now you can't. It's all sealed, but
Yeah.
if you can, I would. Just that way, hey, like these fluids I put in there, I know it's got the right amount. I know what to look for if it's losing oil, whatever. Like, so just good
Mhm.
stuff to think about.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
So,
Thank you for that.
yep.
That's good. I think that's
Perfect.
helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, I would
Oh, yeah.
agree. Because, I mean, these days, yeah, obviously it's a big, expensive purchase, and you just kind of want to know what to look for if you're going to spend the time and money looking for it. So, it makes
No,
perfect sense to me.
absolutely.
Well, we thank you for joining us today, Chris. We had a great time with you on the show. Hopefully, the listener had a great time hearing something new. We've never done a topic like this for
Yeah.
obvious reasons.
Yeah, we don't. It's fun. We're changing it up. We're changing it up.
And we'd also like to say, feel free if you have questions that you'd like us to send to Chris, or if you have questions, or concerns about maybe a purchase you've already made and you want clearance, send us over an email. We're happy to forward them over to him and get back to you with anything you might have. We're at mediocrecontentpodcast@gmail.com, or on Twitter at Mediocre Squawks, and Instagram at Mediocre Content Podcast.
Yes.
Awesome sauce. And we will see you next week. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.